Ma'am, I see your wife every day. Here she comes now. The security guard chuckled, pointing toward the elevators. My smile froze solid as a slender blonde woman in her early 30s, walking with the confidence of someone who owned the whole building, stepped into view. My world collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. Where are you watching us from today? Leave your location in the comments and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Allow me to tell you how I reached that moment that changed my life forever. My name is Carolyn Hope Williams. I'm 52, and just 3 hours ago, I believed I had a solid 28-year marriage with Michael Mike Alexander Reynolds. Well, apparently, I knew a very different Mike than the one who worked on the 47th floor of this skyscraper in Midtown Manhattan. It all started when Mike landed his dream job as the managing director of Sterling Group Development exactly 3 months and 5 days ago. He'd been working toward this for years, and when the opportunity finally came, we couldn't believe it. The only hitch was that the main office was 4 hours away from our home in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's temporary, my love, he'd promised, packing his sharpest suits. Just until I get established, 6 months maximum, and then we'll see if I can negotiate working from home a few days a week. At first, everything seemed normal. He called every night, told me about his meetings, and complained about how much he missed me. We even joked about him learning how to iron his own shirts in the small corporate apartment he'd rented near the office. But the last 3 weeks had been different. The calls got shorter, more distant. When I asked about his day, his answers were vague. Just a lot of work, you know how it is. And he always seemed to be rushing to hang up. Last night, after a particularly cold call, I decided enough was enough. Mike was working too hard, probably stressed, and he needed a surprise. I prepared his favorite meal, packed his preferred dessert, and got up at 5 a.m. to make the trip into New York City. I'd imagined the look of shock on his face, his huge smile. Maybe we'd grab lunch together at some fancy spot near his office. I never imagined I would be the one getting the surprise of my life. The building was imposing, all glass and steel, the kind of place where serious executives work. I felt a little intimidated walking into the lobby, but also proud. My Mike had really made it. "I'm here to see Mike Reynolds. I'm his wife," I told the security guard, a beaming smile on my face. And that's when my world stopped. Now, as I watch this woman approach us with a smile that suggests she knows my husband very well indeed, I feel the ground open up beneath my feet. The guard looks at me curiously, probably wondering why I'm no longer smiling. The woman reaches us, and I notice she's wearing an engagement ring that sparkles as brightly as her confident smile. "Are you looking for Mr. Reynolds?" she asks. Her voice has that easy familiarity that only comes from daily intimacy. Whatever I'm about to discover, I have a horrible feeling that my life as I know it is about to end forever. "Yes, I am here to see Mike Reynolds," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange even to me. The blonde woman studied me with those blue eyes that probably melted men. Internally, I was calculating if I had enough self-control not to slap her right then and there. "How odd," she murmured, tilting her head like an exotic bird. "Mike never mentioned he was expecting visitors today." The security guard looked like he was enjoying the drama as much as a front-row viewer of a daytime soap opera. It was probably the most exciting thing that had happened on his shift in months. "Well, it is a surprise," I managed to reply, keeping my voice as steady as possible. "And you are—" "Oh, excuse me, how rude of me." Her smile widened, and I swore there was something malicious in her eyes. "I'm Natalie Harper, Mr. Reynolds' executive assistant. I work very closely with him. Very closely." The words echoed in my head like alarm bells. There's working closely in professional terms, and then there's working closely in terms I prefer not to imagine right now. "Would you like me to call up and let him know you're here?" Natalie asked, already pulling out her phone. A top-of-the-line iPhone, I noted. Pretty pricey for an assistant. "No, I prefer to surprise him in his office," I said quickly. The last thing I wanted was to give Mike time to stage an act. "Oh, what a shame," Natalie said, and I swear I detected genuine disappointment in her voice. "He just stepped out for a very important meeting with Asian investors. He'll be gone all afternoon." Liar. I didn't know how I knew, but something in the way she avoided my gaze confirmed it. This woman was lying so brazenly I could practically see the falsehoods bubbling out of her mouth. "What time does he usually return?" I asked, crossing my arms. Well, it depends. Some days he's in very early, others he stays very late. His schedule is quite unpredictable. The security guard cleared his throat. Excuse me, ladies, but if you're not going up, I need you to move away from the security area. Natalie nodded. Of course, ma'am. She paused, waiting for me to say my name. For a moment, I considered lying, but I decided I wanted to see exactly how she'd react to hearing who I truly was. Carolyn Williams Reynolds. The transformation on her face was instant and utterly revealing. Her smile evaporated, her eyes widened, and I watched her entire jaw tighten. If I'd had any doubt about what was going on here, that reaction confirmed it completely. She started and then stopped. His wife. Yes, Mike Reynolds' wife. The one he's been married to for 28 years. Does that ring a bell, Natalie? The silence that followed was so tense that even the security guard looked uncomfortable. Natalie opened and closed her mouth several times like a fish out of water. Finally, she found her voice. I need to get back to work. I'm sure you do, I said, and this time I couldn't stop a bit of venom from leaking into my tone. Give Mike my regards when you see him. Tell him his wife dropped by. Natalie practically bolted toward the elevators. I watched her go and noticed she was frantically dialing her phone before the doors closed. The security guard looked at me with something that might have been compassion. Ma'am, is everything all right? No, absolutely nothing was all right. But whatever Mike was up to, I was going to find out. And when I did, he was going to wish he'd been honest with me from the beginning. Because it turns out, Carolyn Williams wasn't the type of woman to cry at home when her world fell apart. She was the type of woman who grabbed a shovel and dug until she found the entire truth, no matter how painful it was. Everything's perfect, I told the guard, regaining my smile. I'm just starting to understand a few things. I left the building with shaky legs, but a clearer mind than I'd had in months. Because finally, all the strange pieces of the last few weeks were beginning to form a very ugly, but very clear puzzle. I sat down at the first coffee shop I found, ordered a double espresso, and pulled out my phone. If Mike wanted to play secrets, I could play too. But first, I needed to confirm a few suspicions that were eating at my gut. I called his office directly. A receptionist answered in a professional voice. Sterling Group Development, good morning. Good morning. I'd like to speak with Mr. Mike Reynolds, please. May I ask who is calling? Here came the moment of truth. It's Carolyn, his wife. There was a pause that lasted approximately 3 centuries. One moment, please. They put me on hold, and during those 5 eternal minutes, my mind raced through every possible scenario. Maybe it was just my imagination. Maybe Natalie was just a very dedicated assistant who... Carolyn? Mike's voice sounded surprised, but definitely not happy. Hi, honey, I said with my best innocent wife voice. How are those meetings with the Asian investors going? Another silence, longer this time. What Asian investors? He finally asked. There it was, first light confirmed. The ones keeping you busy all afternoon, according to your assistant, Natalie, when I stopped by to visit you. You went to the office? His voice jumped a full octave. I wanted to surprise you, but apparently I was the one who was surprised. Natalie is very informative. Carolyn, I can explain. I'm sure you can, but right now I have a few things to do. I'll call you later. I hung up before he could respond. My hands weren't shaking anymore. In fact, I felt strangely calm, like when you're a child and after hours of a toothache. The abscess finally breaks. It hurts, but at least you know exactly what you're dealing with. My next call was to Sophia, my younger sister, who worked in HR for a major firm in Boston. If anyone knew how to investigate a company employee, it was her. Carolyn, what a surprise. Everything okay? Sophia, I need a favor, and I need you not to ask questions until I'm finished telling you everything. That sounds ominous. What's going on? I told her everything, from Mike's distant calls to my encounter with the blonde Natalie. Sophia listened in silence, only interrupting occasionally with a well-placed, that jerk. Carolyn, honey, I don't like this one bit. Give me the company name and what you know about this, Natalie. I have contacts in the city who can find some things out. Can you do it without it looking like an official investigation? Sure, I have friends in the HR world. Women always know more than what appears on paper. 2 hours later, Sophia called me back. Her voice was serious. Carolyn, sit down. I sat down. Natalie Harper isn't just his executive assistant. According to my contact, who knows someone who works there? They've been very close for the past 2 months. They lunch together, leave together, arrive together. The espresso I'd been drinking suddenly tasted like ashes. Is there anything else? There are rumors Mike bought her a new car last month, a white Lexus. A white Lexus, with the money he was supposedly saving from his new salary, so we could remodel the kitchen. Anything else I should know? Carolyn, Sophia hesitated. There's something else, but I don't know if you want to hear it right now. Tell me everything. I'm already up to my neck in this crap. A little more won't drown me. According to the rumor mill, she doesn't know he's married. That final revelation hit me like a cold slap. Mike wasn't just lying to me, he was lying to her too. And somehow, that made everything so much worse, because it meant this wasn't just an affair. This was a completely constructed double life. My phone rang. Mike. This time, I held all the cards. I let the phone ring 3 times before answering, a technique I'd learned in my years working in sales. Never let the other person know how eager you are to talk. Yes, Carolyn, please, we need to talk. Mike's voice sounded desperate. Fine, I'm listening. Not over the phone. Where are you? I looked around the coffee shop where I had spent the last 3 hours shattering my old life and assembling a new version of reality. In New York. Where else would I be? Can you come to the apartment? We have to discuss this like adults. Adults? How funny that he wanted to talk like an adult after behaving like a hormonal teenager. Give me the address. The apartment was exactly what I expected. Small, modern, impersonal. The kind of place you rent when you plan to be there temporarily, but which had clearly been decorated with far more care than he'd admit. Mike opened the door before I even knocked. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, and honestly, I was a little glad to see he was at least suffering a bit. Carolyn, don't... I stopped him with a raised hand. First, you're going to invite me in. You're going to offer me something to drink, like the gentleman you pretended to be for 28 years, and then you're going to tell me the whole truth. And when I say whole, Mike, I mean the whole thing. I headed into the living room without waiting for an invitation. It was a nice space with a couch he definitely hadn't picked out alone and decorative touches that screamed female influence everywhere. Mike followed me like a scolded dog. You want coffee? I want answers, but a coffee wouldn't hurt. While he made the coffee, I observed the apartment with a detective's eye. On the dining table, there were 2 mugs, not one. In the bathroom, which I could see from where I was sitting, there were women's products on the vanity, and hanging on the back of a chair was a woman's jacket that definitely wasn't mine. Mike returned with the coffee and sat across from me, the coffee table between us like a protective barrier. Carolyn, what happened was that you fell in love with another woman, that you've been lying to me for months, that you told her you were single. The last part was a guess, but his expression confirmed I'd hit the bullseye. How did you know? Mike, please, did you honestly think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could maintain 2 separate lives forever? He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I knew from moments when he was genuinely stressed. I didn't plan for this to happen. Oh, sure, you tripped and accidentally fell into a relationship with your assistant. What bad luck. She's not my assistant, Carolyn. She's the director of special projects, and it's complicated. Uncomplicated for me. Mike stood up and started pacing the room. When I got here, everything was new. The job, the city, being alone. Natalie was the one who helped me settle in. She showed me how things worked at the firm. And one thing led to another, I guess. It wasn't planned, he repeated. We just connected. She's smart, ambitious, she gets me. The phrase gets me hit me like a stab. And I don't get you, Mike. After 28 years together, I don't get you. It's not that. It's just with you, everything is so predictable. You always know what I'm going to say. You always have everything under control. With Natalie, I feel young. He stopped short. No, I feel free. Free. That word hurt more than if he had told me he didn't love me anymore because it implied that I was a prison. And what did you tell Natalie about me? Mike avoided my gaze. I told her I was separated, that it was complicated. Did you tell her I was dead, divorced, in a coma? I told her I had an ex-wife in Greenwich, but that it was ancient history. Ex-wife, ancient history. 28 years reduced to ancient history. Mike, I said, and my voice sounded strangely calm, even to me. Do you know the difference between you and me? What? You think this is the end of our story. I think this is just the beginning of mine. I stood up, leaving the coffee untouched on the table. Where are you going? To do what I should have done years ago, live my own life. But before I go, I have one last thing to do. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Natalie, this is Carolyn, Mike's ex-wife. I think you and I need to have a conversation. Mike's face when he heard I had called Natalie was picture-worthy. A perfect blend of terror, panic, and that look men get when they realize their castle of lies is about to crumble on their heads. Carolyn, what did you do? His voice rose 2 octaves. What I should have done from the start, talk directly to the other woman involved in this mess. Natalie had agreed to meet me in an hour at a coffee shop near her office. Her voice on the phone had sounded cautious but curious. Apparently, discovering that the man she had been dating had an ex-wife who was still very much present in his life had also sparked some questions in her head. You can't do this. Mike paced the apartment like a caged lion. You're going to ruin everything. Everything what, Mike? Your perfect lie, your double life? Because from where I'm sitting, there's not much worth saving here. I headed toward the door, but he blocked my way. Please, Carolyn, let me explain things to Natalie my way. Your way? Do you mean lying a little more? Inventing another story that suits you? It's not as simple as you think. Oh, really? Enlighten me. Explain to me what part of lying to 2 women you supposedly love is complicated. Mike slumped onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I didn't plan to fall in love with her. But you did. Yes. At least he was honest about that. And me? Do you still love me? Or is that ancient history too? He took too long to answer, and that pause gave me all the information I needed. Carolyn, you and I have been more roommates than husband and wife for years. There it was, the truth neither of us had wanted to say out loud. You're right, I said, and I saw the surprise in his eyes. You are absolutely right. Do you know why? Why? Because I turned myself into the woman I thought you wanted me to be. The perfect wife, the one who kept the house impeccable, the one who never bothered you with my problems, the one who always had everything under control. I sat on the arm of the chair, keeping my distance but looking directly at him. You know what the funniest thing about all this is, Mike? That for years I've been dying of boredom too. But instead of looking for an exit in the arms of another man, I stayed here trying to fix something that was already broken. Then why are you so angry? The question took me by surprise. Why was I so angry if I had just admitted that our marriage had been dead for years? Because you lied to me. Because you stole my chance to make my own decisions. Because you made me the villain in your story, when you could have been honest from the start. Mike nodded slowly. You're right, I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Mike. It's too late for that. I stood up and walked toward the door again. This time he didn't stop me. What are you going to do now? First, I'm going to talk to your girlfriend. Then I'm going back home and I'm going to start living my real life for the first time in decades. And us? I turned back to look at him one last time. There is no us, Mike. There probably hasn't been for years. The difference is now we both know it. I walked out of the apartment and closed the door behind me. For the first time in hours, I could breathe deeply. My phone chimed. A text message from Natalie. Just got to the coffee shop. I'm at a table in the back. I'm wearing a blue top. I smiled. It was time for the 2 women in Mike's life to have a conversation he definitely wouldn't want to hear. But something told me this conversation was going to be much more interesting than either of us expected. I recognized Natalie immediately. It was impossible not to. She had that self-aware beauty that some young women wear like armor. But as I approached the table, I noticed something I hadn't seen at the office. Uncertainty in her eyes. Natalie? Mrs. Reynolds. She stood up to shake my hand. Her manners were impeccable, I'll give her that. Just Carolyn is fine, I said, sitting across from her. After all, it seems we share something in common. She blushed slightly. Mrs. Carolyn, I didn't know Mike was still married. He told me that it was ancient history. Yes, he told me. Natalie seemed surprised that I already knew that part. Did he speak with you? We just had a very revealing conversation. I signaled the waiter for a coffee. Tell me, Natalie, how did you meet Mike? Over the next 20 minutes, Natalie told me her version of events. And I must admit that despite my initial resentment, I started to feel something akin to compassion for her. According to her account, Mike had arrived at the company as a divorce executive starting a new life after a difficult marriage. He was charming, mature, successful. He'd pursued her for weeks with flowers, invitations to fancy dinners, and all the attention that middle-aged men know how to give when they want to win over a younger woman. He told me he had been separated from his ex-wife for years, but that the divorce had been complicated by financial issues, she explained, nervously stirring her coffee. He explained that he had finally been able to close that chapter of his life. And you believed him? Why wouldn't I believe him? He seemed so honest. Besides, he never wanted me to go to his apartment for the first few weeks. He said he was still sorting things out, that he wanted everything to be perfect before I saw it. Right, enough time to remove any evidence that he was still married. Natalie, can I ask you something personal? She nodded. Are you in love with him? Her answer wasn't immediate, which in itself was revealing. I thought I was, she finally said. But now I don't know what to believe. If he lied to me about something so fundamental as being married, what else has he lied about? It was a good question, and she probably didn't want to know the answer. Would you mind if I told you something about Mike? Go ahead. Mike is a man who needs constant admiration. In our marriage, I became someone who no longer admired him as I used to. I knew him too well. I had seen all his flaws, all his insecurities. Natalie listened attentively. With you, he gets to be the version of himself he always wanted to be. The successful executive, the sophisticated man, the irresistible charmer. He doesn't have to deal with domestic routines, financial worries, or the years of real intimacy that make people feel normal. Are you saying I'm just a fantasy for him? I'm saying you represent the life he thinks he wants. The question is, what happens when that fantasy becomes reality? When you have to deal with his morning moods, his quirks, his insecurities? Natalie was silent for a long moment. Carolyn, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you being so civil with me? I expected you to scream, to blame me. I smiled, and for the first time since the morning, it was a genuine smile. Because I realized something on the way here. You didn't steal my husband, Natalie. Mike stole himself. And honestly, after talking to him today, I'm not sure he's much of a loss. Her face showed a mixture of shock and something that might have been relief. But there is something I want to ask you. What? When you make your decision about what to do with Mike, let it be an informed decision, not based on the lies he told you, but on who he really is. My phone chimed. A message from Mike. Where are you? I need to talk to both of you. I showed the message to Natalie. What do you think? Do you want him to come here so we can all have an adult conversation? Natalie looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Carolyn, I think I have a better idea. What kind of idea? I asked, though something in Natalie's smile suggested it was going to be interesting. Mike thinks he can handle this situation the way he's handled everything else. By controlling the information, controlling the people involved, she said. And for the first time, I could see the cunning intelligence that had probably gotten her to her position at the company. Go on. Tomorrow's Friday. There's a corporate holiday party. Mike invited me as his date. The whole office knows we're together. Continue. What if he showed up with his wife instead of going alone? The idea was so audacious that I was speechless for a moment. Are you suggesting we show up together at his office party? I'm suggesting we give him the opportunity to explain the situation he got himself into to all his colleagues, live and in person. I had to admit the idea had a devilish appeal. Mike had carefully built his new image at the firm. What would happen when that image collided with reality? Natalie, that would be professionally devastating for him. Yes, she said simply, it would be. And you, what about your reputation in the company? She shrugged. My reputation is already compromised. Everyone knows I'm dating the managing director. When it gets out that he's married, I'll automatically become the other woman, regardless of whether I knew the truth. She had a point. In these situations, women always end up being judged more harshly than men. But if I show up with you, she continued, if it's clear that we were both deceived, that we were both victims of his lies, it completely changes the narrative. Exactly. My phone chimed again. Another message from Mike. Carolyn, answer. I'm worried. Worried? How funny. You know what the most ironic thing about all this is? I asked Natalie. What? That this is the most honest and interesting conversation I've had in months. And it's with the woman my husband is cheating on me with. Natalie laughed, and it was a genuine laugh. You know what's the saddest thing? That in the 3 hours we've been talking, I've learned more about Mike than I did in 2 months of dating him. She was right. We had started as rivals and ended up as, allies, friends. I didn't know exactly how to define what was happening between us, but I liked it. So are we doing this? Natalie asked. I thought about Mike, probably pacing circles in his apartment, trying to figure out how to control the situation. I thought about all the years I'd spent being the understanding wife, the one who didn't rock the boat, the one who always put peace above justice. Yes, I finally said. We are doing this. But there's a condition, I added. What? After tomorrow, you make your own decision about Mike, without my influence, without pressure. If you decide you want to fight for him, despite all this, I'll respect it. Natalie nodded. And you also have to promise me something. What? That after tomorrow, no matter what happens, you're going to live your life for yourself. Not as a reaction to Mike, not to punish him or to prove something, but for you. It was a fair deal. Agreed. We clinked our coffee mugs as if they were champagne. You know what? Natalie said. I think this is going to be the most memorable holiday party in Sterling Group Development's history. I had no idea just how memorable it was going to be. That night, in my hotel room, I stayed awake until 3 a.m. questioning whether what I was planning was brilliant or completely crazy. Probably both. Mike had called 17 times. He had sent 22 text messages ranging from apology to anger, from pleading to threatening. I didn't answer any of them. For the first time in 28 years, Mike had no idea where I was or what I was thinking. And honestly, that feeling of power was intoxicating. The last message, sent at 2:47 a.m., read, Carolyn, please don't do something you'll regret. I replied, too late, I already married you. At 10 a.m., Natalie and I met at a mall for what she called Operation Perfect Dress. Her plan was for us to look sophisticated, elegant, but above all allied. How do you want to handle this? She asked as we tried on dresses. Logistics or emotional strategy? Both. I had been thinking about it all night. Logistically, we arrive together, introduce ourselves as the two women in Mike's life, and let him handle the rest. And emotionally? Emotionally, we stick together. No matter what he says or does, we are a united front. Agreed? Agreed. The dress I chose was black, sleek, but not funereal. I wanted to look like a woman who had taken control of her life, not a victim. Natalie chose navy blue, sophisticated and professional. At 5 p.m., we met in the lobby of the hotel where I was staying. Both of us looked impeccable. Ready? She asked me. Ready. The ride to the hotel hosting the party was surprisingly relaxed. We talked about everything except Mike, our jobs, our families, our life plans. I discovered that Natalie was far more interesting than I had initially assumed. She had a master's in engineering, spoke 3 languages, and planned to open her own consultancy in 5 years. You know what the funniest thing is? She said as we parked outside the hotel. What? That you and I could probably be friends under normal circumstances. Who says these aren't normal circumstances? I joked. How often does a woman meet her husband's mistress and discover she's more interesting than the husband himself? We laughed, and for a moment I completely forgot why we were there. But as we entered the hotel ballroom and I saw Mike across the room, reality hit me like a cold slap. He was talking to a group of men in expensive suits, gesturing animatedly, laughing. He looked completely in his element, the successful, self-assured Mike he had carefully constructed in this new life. There he is, Natalie murmured. I see him. He hadn't seen us yet. The ballroom was full of people, soft music playing, tables with elegant food. It was exactly the kind of event Mike loved to attend. How do you want to do this? Natalie asked. I watched Mike for a moment longer. He was telling some story, probably about his professional successes, and the other men were listening with that deference given to someone in a position of power. Directly, I finally said. No drama, no scene. We simply walk up and introduce ourselves. We started walking toward him. It was interesting to watch people's reactions when they saw us. Some clearly recognized Natalie and looked confused to see her with an older woman. Others simply noticed that two very elegant women were heading decisively toward the managing director. We were 10 feet away when Mike saw us. His face was priceless. I literally saw the exact moment his brain processed what he was seeing. His wife and his girlfriend together, walking toward him with perfectly polite smiles. He quickly apologized to the group of men and walked toward us, but it was already too late. We had arrived. "Good evening, Mike," I said with my best proud wife smile. "Hope you don't mind that I brought a +1. The expression on Mike's face at that moment was worth more than all the years of marriage counseling we never had. Pure, unfiltered panic. "Carolyn, Natalie, what are you—" "Hello, darling," I said, giving him a kiss on the cheek as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Natalie and I had the most enlightening conversation yesterday, didn't we, Natalie?" "Absolutely." Natalie smiled, and I must say she also gave him a kiss on the cheek. "We've learned so much from each other." Mike looked at us as if we were two bombs that had just been activated in front of him. "Can we talk privately?" he muttered through clenched teeth. "Oh, don't be shy, Mike," I said, taking his arm. "Introduce us to your colleagues. I'm sure they've heard a lot about your family situation." Just then, an older, distinguished man, clearly a senior figure in the company, approached. "Mike, aren't you going to introduce us to your companions?" Mike swallowed audibly. "Of course, this is Mr. Charles Donovan, chairman of the board. Mr. Donovan, they are— I'm Carolyn Williams Reynolds." I introduced myself, extending my hand. "Mike's wife. And I'm Natalie Harper," Natalie added without missing a beat. "The director of special projects and, well, I guess you could say I'm the other woman in Mike's life." The silence that followed was so deep I could hear the clinking of champagne glasses at the nearest table. Mr. Donovan looked at all three of us, and I could see the wheels turning in his head as he processed the information. "Ah," he finally said, "I see." "Isn't it fascinating?" I said brightly. "Mike has been keeping us separate, but Natalie and I decided it was time to meet. It's been a very educational experience." More people had started to approach, drawn by the palpable tension in our little group. "Mike," said a woman I recognized as another executive, "I didn't know you were married." "Well," Natalie interjected, "he told both of us very different things about his marital status." "He told me he was divorced," I added. "And he told me his job here was temporary," Natalie said. Apparently, Mike has a different version of the truth for every audience. Mike looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. His face had gone from panic to pure terror. "Ladies, I think this is a private conversation," Mr. Donovan tried, though I could see the curiosity in his eyes. "Oh, but Mr. Donovan," I said, "Natalie and I believe in transparency." "Isn't that right, dear?" "Absolutely," Natalie replied, "especially after months of opacity." By then, we had an audience of at least 15 people. The rumor was spreading through the ballroom like wildfire. Mike finally found his voice. "Enough! You can't do this here." The entire ballroom fell silent. All conversation stopped. Mike realized too late that he had just yelled at his wife and his girlfriend in front of his entire new company. "Can't do what, Mike?" I asked him in a dangerously calm voice. "Exist in the same space? Meet each other? Discover the truth?" Mr. Donovan cleared his throat. "Mike, I think it might be best if you continued this conversation elsewhere." "He's right," I said. "Mike, why don't you join us outside? Natalie and I have a few questions for you." As we walked toward the exit, I heard fragments of conversations behind us. I didn't know he was married. What an awkward situation. Both women seemed so calm. Once outside the ballroom, on a private balcony, Mike finally lost control. "Are you crazy? You just ruined my career." "No," Natalie said with icy calm. "You ruined your career when you decided to lie to everyone." "And now," I added, "Natalie and I have something to tell you." Mike looked at us like a cornered animal, and I suppose in a way he was. His lies had finally caught up with him, and he had nowhere left to hide. "What do you want?" he asked, and for the first time in 28 years, I heard genuine desperation in his voice. Natalie and I looked at each other. We had talked about this moment all day, but now that it was here, the words felt different. "Mike," I began, "what we want no longer has anything to do with you." "What does that mean?" "It means," Natalie said, that we've both decided to move on, separately, without you. Mike's face went through several emotions: confusion, relief, renewed panic. Wait, what? Natalie is going to ask for a transfer to the Dallas office, I explained. It turns out she has contacts there who have been trying to recruit her for months. And Carolyn is going back to Greenwich to put the house up for sale and start her new life, Natalie added. Mike looked at us as if we were speaking a foreign language. New life, I smiled. And for the first time in days, it was a completely genuine smile. Yes, Mike. It turns out that when two women sit down and talk honestly about their lives, they discover fascinating things. Like that we had both been living to please a man who didn't know what he wanted, Natalie added. Or that we had both put our dreams on hold to fit someone else's vision of us, I continued. Mike looked lost. But I love you both. Natalie laughed, but it wasn't a cruel laugh. Mike, you don't love us. You love the versions of us you created in your head. You turned me into the perfect wife who never complains, I said. And you turned Natalie into the perfect mistress who never demands anything, Natalie concluded. But neither of those women is really us. Mike sat down heavily in one of the balcony chairs, his head in his hands. I don't understand. What are you going to do? Natalie is going to take that job in Dallas she always wanted, but never pursued because she was too busy being your secret girlfriend, I explained. And Carolyn is going to use half of the marital asset to open the bookstore cafe she always dreamed of, but never had the courage to try, Natalie added. The shock on Mike's face was almost comical. Bookstore cafe? Surprise, I said dryly. Turns out your wife had dreams of her own. Who would have imagined? But what about me? Natalie and I exchanged a look that contained everything we had discussed in the last 24 hours. You, Natalie said finally, are going to have to learn to live with the consequences of your decisions. Your career will probably survive, I added. Powerful men always find a way to recover from these scandals, but you're going to have to do it alone. What if I want to fight for you? What if I want to fix things? For the first time since I'd arrived in New York, I felt something akin to compassion for Mike, but it was a distant compassion, like the kind you feel for a stranger going through a difficult time. Mike, I said gently, you can't fix something that never really worked. Our marriage worked for a few years, but for the last 10, we've been pretending, and your relationship with Natalie was built on lies from the beginning. Natalie nodded. What you need to do now is figure out who you really are when you're not trying to be the man you think every woman wants. Mike was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded very tired. Are you really going to do this? Are you going to leave everything behind? We're not leaving anything behind, I said. We're taking what's ours and building something new. And can you forgive me? Natalie and I looked at each other again. Mike, Natalie said finally, forgiveness isn't something you can ask for. It's something we can choose to give in our own time if we want to. And honestly, I added, right now we're not thinking about forgiveness. We're thinking about the future. I got up from my chair. Natalie, are you ready to go back? Ready. As we walked toward the door, Mike shouted after us, what if I regret it? What if I really want to change? I turned back one last time. Then do it, Mike, change. But do it for yourself, not for us. We've already moved on. 6 months later, I was standing in my new bookstore cafe in Greenwich, watching my first customers of the day walk through the door. The place was small but cozy, with shelves full of books, comfortable seating, and the constant aroma of fresh coffee. My phone rang. It was Natalie calling from Dallas. How's the official first day going? Perfectly chaotic, I told her, laughing. And your new office? Amazing. Carolyn, I think we did the right thing. I know, I said, and I truly did. You know what the funniest thing is? What? That the best decision Mike made in years was lying to me. Because if he hadn't, I never would have met you, and we never would have discovered how strong we can be. You're right, Natalie laughed. Though I probably shouldn't thank him for it. No, I agreed. But we can thank ourselves for turning his disaster into our opportunity. After hanging up, I stood in my new life, surrounded by books and possibilities, and realized that for the first time in decades, I had no idea what was going to happen next. And that didn't scare me at all. It thrilled me. Because it turns out that when you lose the life you thought you wanted, Sometimes you discover the life you truly needed.